You know, if I'm going to talk about movie tie-in games, I'm going to have to talk about movies too. So let's see if I can keep this brief because I really have no idea how Hollywood works. See, back in 1999, Universal had a hit with The Mummy directed by Stephen Sommers. Regardless of your opinion on the quality of the movie, it made a shitload of money, and Universal likes money. So they made a sequel, which was also directed by Sommers, and again, made a shitload of money. So, after Universal had 2 hit movies on their hands based off one of their classic monsters, the gears started turning, and I imagine there was a meeting like this. So yeah, in 2004, Van Helsing, directed once again by Stephen Sommers, was released. Compared to the success of the 2 Mummy movies, yeah. I think a movie needs to make like double its budget back to be considered successful, so you know, this wasn't successful. Like most blockbuster movies at the time, Van Helsing had tie-ins. These took the form of a toy line, an animated prequel movie, a comic book, and of course a video game. Van Helsing the video game was released on May 6th, 2004, one day before the release of the movie. It was published by Vivendi Universal and developed by Sapphire, who also did... that's a lot of tie-ins. The game starts with a cutscene of Van Helsing trying to track down Dr. Jekyll for what I'm assuming is a rescue mission because there's this woman that's chained up. But considering Van Helsing unloads his pistols at Mr. Hyde and she seems to be pretty close, I'm also assuming he accidentally shot her in the face. For the time, the game looks quite nice, even with me upscaling it. Plus, Hugh Jackman comes back to voice the title character, which I'm pretty sure was just in his contract for the movie. There's no way in hell Sapphire had Hugh Jackman money. The story is the same as the movie. You're on a mission to kill Dracula. If you've seen Van Helsing, you got the story for the game down. Granted, there are some liberties taken, like Carl is nowhere to be found, some areas are expanded, and there's some new areas as well. The game officially starts like the movie with Van Helsing heading to Paris to track down Mr. Hyde. This here is pretty much a tutorial level to get you situated with the controls and some basic combat. From there, you'll head to Transylvania, make your way to Dracula's castle, fight some bosses, and kill Dracula in a boss fight that honestly wouldn't feel out of place in a Castlevania game. Which reminds me, that's a nice little reference, I like that. For the most part, the game consists of you going from point A to point B, doing some platforming, solving some basic puzzles, fighting through hordes of enemies with a variety of weapons, and a boss fight. From the start, you get the Tojo blades and the dual pistols, but as you progress, you'll find more weapons, including a shotgun, the crossbow, a gun that shoots balls of lightning, and even a fucking Gatling gun. Plus, there's a pair of scimitars. Along with the weapons, each one has a limited amount of alternate ammo that does much more damage and makes you fire certain guns much faster. This is nice and all, but once you get the Gatling gun, you'll more than likely just stick with that for the rest of the game and any subsequent runs. It just tears through enemies like a 16-year-old hopped up on Monster would his drywall after he lost a round of zombies. The combat has been compared to Devil May Cry by a lot of people, and when I was younger, before I ever touched a DMC game, I didn't see it. Now that I'm older and have played through DMC 1, yeah, I can feel it. This isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, I think it fits well for the tone of the game and the character you're playing as. Something you'll notice as soon as you start playing the game is that each gun and its alternate ammo does either more or less damage depending on which enemy you're going up against. For example, the pistols shoot silver bullets as their alternate ammo, and do more damage to vampires and werewolves. If you're lucky enough to get a copy of the game with the instruction manual, it'll tell you briefly which ammo is most effective against which enemies. To my knowledge, this is never told to you in-game or even hinted at besides general trial and error, and if it is, I haven't been able to find it. Along with your guns and melee weapons, you get these vials that when thrown, they do a massive amount of damage to whichever enemy you're targeting. As for the enemies, there's actually quite a variety. You got gargoyles, werewolves, skeletons, Dracula's children, these owl things, and more. Most of these are pretty easy to take care of, however, these little fucks right here are the absolute worst. Whatever the hell these fucking dwarves are called. They tend to appear in groups like most enemies in the game. However, I swear to God, the moment you kill one, 2 more will spawn like you cut off a goddamn Hydra's head. When you first meet them, you really don't have much in the way of crowd control, and they take quite a few hits before going down, especially the ones with the spikes on their back. I died more than once to these little pricks, but once I got the electric gun, it was fucking payback time. Yeah, taste the lightning, you fucking English countryside dwarf motherfuckers. Just watch this one part when you get the Gatling gun. I know they want you to test it out, but Jesus Christ, cool it. Defeating enemies will also drop a set of crosses that can also be found scattered throughout the levels. The red ones restore health, and the green ones act as your currency that can be spent at the armory between levels. Here you can buy upgrades for Van Helsing, and some useful items like health and ammo replenishers. As for the bosses, it's pretty much every big-name monster from the movie. You know, Dracula, Velkin, Igor, Dracula's brides, and even Frankenstein's monster. You'll be fighting them all more than once, and most of the fights are pretty straightforward. You just attack and dodge until they're dead. This is just my opinion, but while the controls work pretty well for the hordes of enemies you fight, for the bosses, it feels kinda clunky. Let me explain this as best as I can. Most of the time you'll be targeting the boss and attacking, then they'll attack and you gotta dodge, but sometimes you'll be targeting and you jump, but you can't jump while targeting, you need to end up dodging, it doesn't work and you get hit. Did that make sense? Anyways, the game features loads of unlockables as well. Most of them are just alternate skins for the enemies and the usual fare like a big head mode, but some are actually pretty useful. For example, you can access the armory from the pause menu at any time, or have an infinite speed boost that just lets you zip through the levels. Plus, beating the game on hard mode gives you infinite ammo for your alternate ammo. It's pretty fun just to zoom around while firing off a constant stream of electricity. Some of these you unlock by just finding them in-game, and others you have to unlock by completing these little mini-games, which is a bit of a process. See, during the game you can find these hidden eggs. Once you find these eggs, you can use them in certain spots and it'll take you to this hub where you can play a series of mini-games. These range from pretty easy to just a wee bit unfair, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't care enough to complete these. Once you unlock and beat each minigame twice, you'll unlock the elephant gun weapon. It's an incredibly powerful one-shot rifle that's offset by a slow reload. Like I said, I didn't care enough to complete the minigames, so I downloaded a save file and tried it out on an emulator. That is surprisingly underwhelming. For the effort I went through to get this, I would have expected at least a one-shot boss killer. There's also 2 costumes available for you to unlock. You unlock the first by beating the game without losing your hat. See, when you get attacked in the game, there's a chance to get your hat knocked off. You can pick it back up, and if you beat the game while finishing every mission with your hat on, you get a costume. The second is found in some vat of goo during the first boss fight with Dracula in Mission 5. To select these costumes, you just go into the cheat menu and activate them, right? Well, not exactly. First, you select the costume, then you reset the game while holding a certain button through the opening cutscene. Okay, that's a little excessive, but the costumes are pretty cool. Van Helsing definitely has its flaws, but it's by no means a terrible game. The combat is fun, it's faithful to the source material, and has some replay value. I've played a lot of licensed tie-in games in my time, and I have to say, this is one of the better ones. It's one of those games that you can probably sit down with and beat in an afternoon on your first run, and hell, probably an hour on New Game Plus. I recommend it, even if you could care less about the movie. It's evident a lot of love went into this game, and I think it's one of those licensed games that deserves a little more recognition. It's available on PS2 and Xbox and can be found for decently cheap if you want to go the physical route. There's also a port on the Game Boy Advance, but this is a pile of shit, and that's all I can really say. Like, anything that was good about the console version is just gone. Don't play this. Anyways, it's time for me to close up shop before that weird night janitor gets here. I'm just gonna end on the game's final cutscene because it's interesting.
Please, God, forgive me. You have been forgiven. Look.
Well, alright, it's better than the ending to the movie.